It was around 1 in the morning when my daughter collapsed right at my doorstep. Her face was bruised, her lips split open. Between sobs she confessed, her husband had hit her, all because of his mistress. I didn't say a word. I just held her close, helped her inside, and once she was safe, I quietly slipped into my police uniform. My hands were steady as I loaded the bullets. Then I called my lawyer. "Start the plan now," I told him. "If you're hearing this story, hey, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to my channel, and tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from. I really want to know how far my revenge stories traveled." That night, I just turned off the TV and dropped onto the couch, half asleep after a long, draining shift. Being a cop in this town wasn't always about life or death, but that day had been rough. I'd broken up a bar fight downtown and then spent hours writing the damn report. My whole body ached. All I wanted was to sink into sleep. Outside, dogs were barking and the roar of motorcycles echoed down the block. Those neighborhood kids racing again. Even though it was way past 1, no one seemed ready to sleep. I figured the guys on the corner were still drinking and smoking like every other night. I closed my eyes, trying to shut out the noise. Then came a hard, desperate knock on the door that jolted me upright. My heart pounded, instinct took over. Who could be knocking like that at this hour? I thought. I grabbed a chair just in case and called out, "Who is it?" My voice shook, not from fear but because I felt something was wrong. No answer. Just a few weaker knocks and then a trembling voice. "Mom, please open up." I froze. It was Emily. My daughter. I rushed to unlock the door, and as soon as it swung open, Emily fell into my arms, trembling like a wounded animal. I held her tight, feeling how weak she was, like every bit of strength had left her body. "Emily, baby, what happened?" I whispered, my throat closing up. The porch light hit her face and what I saw made my stomach twist. Her lip was split, dried blood at the corner and one eye swollen shut. She was holding her stomach like she was trying to keep the pain inside. "My husband, he hit me. Because of his mistress," she choked out before bursting into tears. My blood boiled. My heart shattered. My daughter, the girl I raised, loved more than my own life, was standing there broken. I helped her to the sofa, grabbed a damp cloth and the first aid kit. "Stay still, sweetheart. Let me look," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. I cleaned the blood from her lip, but it kept welling up, red and raw, as if the wound refused to close. The cut wasn't just skin deep. It carried the weight of something far worse. Emily's hands were shaking over her stomach. Gently, I lifted them and raised her shirt. Oh God. A huge bruise, black and purple, spread across her abdomen. It looked like someone had beaten her over and over. My breath caught. It felt like I'd taken those blows myself. "Emily, who did this to you?" "It was Jason, wasn't it?" I asked, my voice trembling with anger. She didn't answer, just cried harder. The sound tore through the silence of the house. Without thinking twice, I grabbed my phone and called the number I knew by heart. "Dr. Matthews, get ready." "I'm bringing my daughter in," I said quickly. My car was still in the shop getting its brakes fixed, so I called a taxi instead. While we waited, I covered Emily with a blanket. Her phone kept lighting up on the table. I glanced over and saw 7 missed calls from Jason, plus a message flashing on the screen. "Open your mouth and you'll lose everything." I felt my blood rush. I reached for the phone, wanting to see what else he'd sent, but Emily, weak as she was, snatched it back in panic. "Mom, don't. Please. It's nothing." Her eyes were full of fear, like touching that phone might make everything worse. I didn't push. I just held her hand tight. "I'm here, baby. Nothing's gonna happen to you," I said softly. But deep down I knew this had gone way too far. When the taxi arrived, I helped her inside, one arm holding her up, the other fumbling with her bag. On the way to the hospital, she leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered over and over, "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't want to wake you, but I couldn't stay there. I had to run." Each word stabbed at my heart. I was her mother. I'd promised to protect her. And now she'd come to me in the middle of the night, broken by the man I once believed was good for her. The taxi pulled up in front of St. Mary's Hospital, the cold glow of the neon sign spelling out "Emergency Room." I helped Emily out of the taxi. My daughter could barely stand. Her whole body trembled and she was clutching her stomach like she was holding on to the last of her strength. I squeezed her hand, hiding how hard my own heart was pounding. "I'm here. Don't be afraid," I whispered, though I was terrified too. Dr. Matthews, who was on duty, met us at the emergency room door. She looked at Emily, then at me, her face full of worry, but she said nothing. She simply motioned to a nurse who took my daughter into an exam room. My legs felt like lead as I followed. When the nurse took Emily's thin jacket off, I nearly gasped. Besides the bruises on her face, there were marks on her shoulders and wrists, dark, angry welts, purple and red like quiet accusations. I stood frozen, my fingers gripping the edge of the counter so hard it hurt. Inside, rage was burning like a coal. What did that bastard do to her? I thought, but I kept it inside so Emily wouldn't start sobbing again. Dr. Matthews wrote down each injury with a steady hand. "We need x-rays to check for broken ribs," she said, voice calm but serious. I nodded without answering, watching Emily lie there with her eyes closed, like she was trying to disappear from the world. While we waited for the results, I went to the front desk to sign the treatment forms and put down a deposit. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. An unknown number popped up on the screen and I knew who it was before I even looked. Jason. Rage hit me like a wave and I hung up without answering. He didn't deserve to talk to me, not after what he'd done. Back in the room, Emily had dozed off from exhaustion. I pulled the blanket up to her chin and sat there, my hands still shaking. Seeing her sleeping face made me think of the little girl she used to be, the one who'd run through the yard shouting, "Mom, look at me." That smile was gone now, replaced by pain and fear. I sat by the bed and watched her sleep, my heart in pieces. I was her mother and I had failed to keep her safe. But under that guilt, a hard determination lit up. I couldn't let this happen again. Not to her. Not ever. Once Emily was stabilized and hooked to N4, I brought her home. I warmed a glass of milk and set it on the nightstand, then closed the door quietly so she could rest. Dawn was just starting to touch the sky. I stepped onto the porch to tidy up and saw Mrs. Parker across the street sweeping her yard. When she spotted me, she hurried over, all concern. "Did something happen at your place last night, Laura?" I heard knocks and crying. I swallowed and told her simply that Emily had been beaten by her husband and had run to my house in the middle of the night. Mrs. Parker's jaw tightened. "How dare he treat his wife that way?" she fumed. "That man has no shame." I nodded. I felt a little less alone. Then I remembered Mrs. Parker had a doorbell camera. "Could you check it? Did it record anything last night?" I asked. She opened her phone and showed me the footage. There on my screen was Emily at my door, knocking, weak and desperate, her small cries swallowed by the night. Seeing her like that made my chest ache all over again, but I also knew that video would be important evidence. I thanked Mrs. Parker with everything I had. She squeezed my hand and said, "Get her justice. I know you can do it." I went to the closet and looked at my police uniform hanging there. Blue shirt, khaki pants, belt, holster, everything in its place. I picked it up and felt the rough fabric under my fingers. Quietly, I put it on button by button, tightening the belt. Each small movement felt like a promise. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was an officer and I would use every tool I had to protect my girl. When I finished, I called the family lawyer. "Mark, start the plan now," I said, no room for hesitation. He sounded half awake but understood. "Are you sure, Laura?" he asked. "Completely," I replied. "Get ready." I hung up and grabbed my camera. Back in Emily's room, I gently pulled the blanket aside and photographed every injury. The split lip, the swollen eye, the bruise on her stomach. Every flash of the camera felt like I was freezing the truth into something I could show the world. Then I set up my laptop, copied Mrs. Parker's video to a USB and backed up everything. Photos, files, the video, careful and methodical. I didn't plan to let this disappear into whispers. Not on my watch. I sat there watching the laptop screen glow and I knew in that moment, there was no turning back. I'd stepped into a war not only for Emily, but for the oath I'd taken as an officer. By the time I finished copying Mrs. Parker's video, the clock read 8 in the morning. Emily was still out cold in bed, her face swollen, her lips dry and cracked, like pain had followed her into sleep. I slipped into the kitchen, warmed a bowl of chicken soup, carried the tray back and woke her gently. She opened her eyes, surprised to see me in my uniform. "Mom," she murmured, then shook her head. "I'm not hungry." I sat down beside her and kept my voice soft. "You need to eat, honey, to be strong." Her eyes filled with tears, but she took the spoon and swallowed slowly. Seeing her like that, what she used to be, the bright, laughing girl who ran through the yard shouting, Mom, look at me. That smile was gone now, replaced by fear and bruises. I decided we needed another check. The bruise on her stomach worried me. Dr. Matthews met us back in the ER. She was serious and quiet. We need a CT, she said, to rule out internal bleeding. While we waited for the results, I sat in the lobby, plugged the USB into my laptop and watched the footage again. At 1:02 a.m., Emily was on my front step, knocking, her sobs muffled on the camera. I copied the file to an encrypted external drive and locked it with a password, handling every detail like evidence. This wasn't just to protect her. It was to build a wall against Jason Reynolds. Then Emily's phone buzzed. The screen showed Jason Reynolds. My chest turned cold. I grabbed the phone before she could react and shut it off. She looked at me terrified. Mom, if he finds out I talked, he won't leave me alone, she whispered. The name nearly swallowed her whole. I squeezed her hand and kept my voice steady. I'm here. Nothing's going to happen to you. But I didn't say anything else. I took the SIM out of her phone and slipped in a burner I'd prepared. I wasn't about to let him find her again. The CT came back a few minutes later. Bad soft tissue contusions, but no internal bleeding. I breathed, relief and worry wrestling in my chest. Her body could heal. What was inside her would take much longer. I called Mark Turner. I have medical records and the neighbor's video, I told him bluntly. He set a meeting for the afternoon to collect everything. Meanwhile, Mrs. Parker showed up at my door with a pot of still warm chicken broth. This will help her, she said, her voice kind. If you need a witness, I'll be there. I felt less alone. That afternoon, Emily kept waking from nightmares, jerking and talking in her sleep. She kept saying in broken bursts that Jason had pushed her and that a woman, Ashley, had taunted her in their own house. She'd corner me, make fun of me, Emily said, and hearing that, knowing I'd eaten at the same table as that man, made something inside me crack and then harden. I photographed every bruise again close up, even the watch on her wrist so the timestamps matched. Each photo wasn't just proof, it was a promise. We went to Mark Turner's office with a folder of evidence. Photos, medical reports, the USB. He laid everything out, studied it and said, "This is solid. If we can prove public adultery and intimidation, he's got nowhere to hide." I gripped my purse until my knuckles hurt and I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't just a grieving mother anymore. I was an officer and I would use every tool I had to make Jason pay. That night I didn't bring Emily home. I left her at Mrs. Parker's, safe and watched. I drove back alone, the city lights blurring past, my chest heavy but my jaw set. I changed out of my police uniform and slipped into an old jacket and jeans, trying to look like anyone else. Just another woman out running errands, not a cop gathering evidence. I grabbed my camera from the drawer, checked the battery and memory card and got into my beat-up car. Every turn of the wheels reminded me that I wasn't just driving through Springfield, I was stepping deeper into a war, for Emily and for the justice I'd sworn to uphold. I parked in a shadowed alley near Murphy's Bar, the place Emily said Jason liked to hang out. The neon sign buzzed over the door, casting streaks of red and blue light on the street. I sank low in my seat, camera ready. Around 8 p.m. Jason's silver truck rolled up, headlights sweeping across the alley. My heart pounded but I stayed calm, finger on the shutter. A few minutes later, a woman appeared from the corner. Tight red dress, cigarette between her fingers, lipstick the color of blood. I knew instantly who she was. Ashley Miller, the woman Emily had told me about. The mistress, the one who'd helped destroy my daughter's peace. Jason killed the engine, stepped out and opened the door for her, slipping his arm around her waist like they'd done it 100 times. Watching him made my stomach twist. This man, who'd once sat at my table, called me mom, was now holding another woman while my daughter lay home bruised and broken. I clicked photo after photo. The neon light hit their faces perfectly, catching every detail. Each shot hurt, but each one was proof. One more nail in his coffin. I followed them from a distance to a cheap roadside motel, its red vacancy sign flickering in the dark. From across the street I snapped a few more pictures of them walking in hand. Then I circled to the back lot and photographed Jason's truck, making sure the license plate and a digital clock nearby were visible. Every picture was a bullet. When I got home I uploaded them all to a password-protected folder on my laptop, double-checking every image. Then I called Mark Turner, my lawyer. "I've got photos, clear shots of his affair. Faces, plates, time, everything. Mark's voice sharpened instantly. Good Laura. Keep them safe. Don't let him know. I nodded, though he couldn't see me, a strange mix of anger and relief running through me. Just then my phone buzzed. It was Emily calling from Mrs. Parker's number. Her voice shook. Mom, he just called one of my friends asking where I am. When she said she didn't know, he threatened her. I'm scared. Hearing her broke something inside me. Even after she'd escaped, Jason still haunted her, still reaching through fear. I steadied my voice. Stay calm, honey. Stay at Mrs. Parker's. I've got him under watch. But inside, I knew I had to move faster before he found another way to hurt her. I called Captain Morales, a trusted colleague at the precinct. I told him everything, about the video, the medical records, the photos of Jason and Ashley. I need a patrol near my block, I said, especially by Mrs. Parker's house. Morales didn't hesitate. You've got it. But Laura, be careful. What you're doing is risky. But if your evidence holds, you'll take him down. I thanked him and sent a copy of the photos just in case something happened to me. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat at the dining table surrounded by files. The medical report, photos of Emily's injuries, the affair pictures, Mrs. Parker's video. Each file felt like a blade of truth. I'd once believed Jason would protect my daughter. I'd called him family. Now he was the monster who hurt her, who threatened her for daring to survive. The thought of it burned through my chest. The next morning I drove Emily to Dr. Nora Kim, the psychologist Mark had recommended. Emily needed help, real help, to start healing. I waited outside, my stomach tight. Watching her walk into that office, shoulders drooping, broke me all over again. I was supposed to be the strong one, the protector. But I'd failed her once and I wasn't about to fail her again. While I sat there, my phone vibrated. It was Tom Alvarez, head of the County Property Records Office, someone I knew from past cases. His voice was tense. Laura, I shouldn't be saying this over the phone, but your name and Emily's just showed up on a land transfer file. Doesn't look right. You might want to come by. I frowned, confused. We hadn't signed anything, but something in his tone sent a chill through me. I'll be there right away, I said, standing up. I told Dr. Kim I'd be back for Emily later and walked out, my gut already telling me something was very, very wrong. When I walked into the county recorder's office, Tom Alvarez motioned me into his small, cluttered office and opened a file with a frown. There's something odd here, he said, sliding the papers across the desk. This property was transferred to an Ashley Miller last week. I felt the room tilt and my blood run cold. That can't be, I said, my voice cracking. Tom handed me the paperwork. The signatures looked shaky and wrong, but there they were, my name and Emily's on a recorded transaction. I asked who'd turned the papers in. He lowered his voice. The clerk says your son-in-law Jason brought them by. He said you'd asked him to handle it because you were busy. Rage rose in me like a tide. Not only had he beaten my girl and cheated on her, he'd forged our names to steal the land that had belonged to my father for generations. I left with a photocopy Tom pressed into my hand, and he warned me quietly, Laura, be careful. Don't let anyone in this office know I told you. I promised, though inside I felt like I was walking on glass. That afternoon I picked Emily up from therapy. She looked worn but calmer, and we went straight to Mark Turner's office with the photocopy. He spread the papers out, studied them, then tapped the table. This is the final nail, he said. Fraud plus the other evidence, he won't get away. Emily sat there and said through tears, he forged signatures to take Grandpa's land, and I gripped her hand so hard I thought she'd feel my anger. Later that evening I met with Captain Morales and handed him the copy. He read it, nodded and promised, this is solid. He won't get away with it. That night, I locked all the documents in the little safe in my bedroom and couldn't sleep. The clock slid past midnight while I sat in the dark, thinking about what Jason had done. Saturday morning I left Emily at Mrs. Parker's with the patrol watching the block. Then I put on plain clothes, slipped the evidence into a folder in my bag and drove to Reynolds Pawn and Loan, Jason's shop. Knowing this wasn't a visit, it was a confrontation. The pawn shop smelled like oil and smoke. 2 of his goons glanced my way and one sneered, look who showed up, the mother-in-law. I ignored them and walked straight to the back office where Jason sat counting bills. I set the folder on his desk. Photos of Emily's bruises, Mrs. Parker's video, the ER report, the photocopy of the forged deed, and watched him change color for a heartbeat before he smoothed his expression into a sneer. "What are these little papers?" he said, voice full of contempt. "I've got better lawyers than you." I met his stare coolly. "We'll see each other in court," I said. He sprang up, furious, the two men moving toward me, but I slipped my hand into my jacket and flashed my badge. They froze, their bravado gone. I didn't threaten him. I didn't have to. I left the folder on his desk and walked out with my badge tucked under my jacket and a calm I hadn't felt since that first night at my doorstep. Jason went red, slammed his hand down on the desk and almost shouted, "Your daughter is weak. She deserved to be disciplined. Don't think that badge will always save you." Hearing that, something inside me snapped. He actually tried to justify the bruises, the night Emily had run to my door bleeding and terrified, by calling her weak. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab him and shake him until he understood what he'd done. But I kept my hands in my lap. I didn't answer. I picked up the folder, slid it into my bag and stood to leave. Before I walked out, I turned back, looked him dead in the eye and said slow and steady, "Let me make this clear. The rules have changed. It won't be you doing the disciplining anymore. It will be the law." He shouted after me, "Walk out that door and you stop being my mother-in-law. Don't come crying when I get nasty." I stopped on the sidewalk, looked at him one last time without flinching and said, "Fine. Consider yourself no longer my daughter's husband." The wind kicked up dust on the road as I climbed into the car. I dialed Mark as soon as I was buckled in. "It's time to file," I said. He answered calm but careful, "All right. Get ready. He'll hit back hard." I nodded even though he couldn't see me. My heart went cold. This war wouldn't be easy. I knew that. But I was ready. A few days after the pawnshop showdown, rumors started to spread like gasoline. At the market that morning, two women at a vegetable stall whispered as I walked past, "She probably made it up." She always talked back to him. In the cafe, an old man sipped his coffee and muttered that I was using my badge to ruin my son-in-law. Felt like knives in my ribs. These were the same neighbors who used to wave to Emily when she was a kid. Now they believed Jason's lies. I kept my head down and hurried home, fighting the sting behind my eyes. At noon, Mark called me into his office. He spread a new stack of papers on the desk. "He hired Henry Vance," he said. "He filed a counterclaim." I stared at the blue ink signature, fresh, clean. The filings accused Emily of making everything up to extort him, and they accused me of abusing my authority as a police officer. I felt sick. Emily turned pale and whispered, "Mom, he's trying to make me look like a liar." I squeezed her hand so hard it hurt, trying to give her strength. But inside I felt torn open. I had hoped this town, my town, would stand with us. Instead, it felt like everyone was turning away. That afternoon, as I walked Emily to Mrs. Parker's, two of Jason's goons stood in an alley, smoking and watching. One looked up and said with a leer, "Careful. People believe him more than you." I kept my mouth shut, pulled Emily close and got her inside. My hands were shaking as I called Captain Morales. He promised to step up the night patrols, but his voice sounded worried. "Laura, he's trying everything to flip this." I thanked him and told him to be careful. That night at the corner store, the owner leaned in and hissed, "They say you made it up to get the land." I forced a smile and left, feeling the world tilt. When I got home, an unmarked envelope was shoved under the door. Inside, a scrawled note, "Shut up or you lose your daughter." My hands trembled as I read it, not from fear but from fury. How dare he threaten my child? I placed the note in the evidence folder, careful and deliberate. If he wanted to play dirty, I'd collect every dirty thing he left behind. Late that night, Mark and I had an emergency meeting. He read the note and nodded. "Good," he said, quiet and brutal. "The dirtier he plays, the more he traps himself. But public opinion is on him right now. We need something big, something that changes the story." I left his office with the files tucked under my arm and a new kind of resolve. We would hit back harder, smarter, and cleaner. I would not let Jason bury the truth under his lies. When Mark said the only way to flip the case was through Ashley, I felt a faint spark of hope in the darkness. Ashley Miller, Jason's mistress, might be the key to turning everything around. But I also knew getting her on our side wouldn't be easy. I stood there in the dim light of the office, thinking about Emily, about the bruises on her skin and the lies that were choking us. That pain burned slow and steady, but it kept me going. I wasn't going to let Jason win. I wasn't going to let his lies bury the truth. The day after that tense encounter at the pawnshop, I found out Ashley often went to a small dive bar on the edge of Jefferson Street. I knew it was my chance, the move that could change the whole game. I threw on a baggy jacket and a cap trying to blend in and headed there. Inside, the place reeked of beer and cigarette smoke, ranchera music blaring from a dusty jukebox. I picked a dark corner table and kept my eyes on the door. I couldn't risk being recognized, not before I spoke to her. Around 10 that night she appeared. A short, tight dress, red lipstick, a cocktail in her hand. She moved like she owned the room, though her confidence looked forced. Watching her, I felt a strange mix of anger and pity. This was the woman who'd helped destroy my daughter's peace, but she was also one more pawn in Jason's dirty game. I took a deep breath, stood up and walked over. Ashley looked up, defensive. "Who are you?" she asked. I didn't answer. Instead, I placed an envelope on the table between us. Inside were copies of the forged land papers Jason had filed, and a bank statement showing Ashley's massive debts, her house on the edge of foreclosure. "I'm Jason's mother-in-law," I said quietly, my tone sharp. "If you stay loyal to him, you'll go down with him. But if you cooperate, you can save yourself." She laughed, quick and mocking, but the sound died when she opened the envelope. The color drained from her face as she saw the fake signatures and the red numbers of her account. "The police captain already knows everything," I continued, steady but cold. "When the trial begins, you'll be called as a witness. And if you lie, you'll be facing fraud charges yourself. Is that what you want?" Ashley sat silent for a long moment, her cocktail glass trembling in her hand. Then she drained it in one gulp and spoke softly, her voice cracking. "He promised me part of the land," she said. "He told me everything would be fine, that I'd have it all. But no. I see he used me." I felt a flicker of pity, but I couldn't afford softness. "You have one last chance," I told her. "Do the right thing. Tell the truth in court." Just then the bar door burst open and Jason's two thugs stepped inside. Their eyes found me sitting with Ashley. They started toward us, faces hard. Without a second thought, I pulled my badge from my pocket and set it on the table. "Go ahead," I said, my voice low but firm. "Try something." The dim light caught the gold of the badge. Both men stopped cold, their confidence slipping into unease. They backed off slowly, glaring as they left. Ashley was pale as paper, gripping the table edge. I leaned closer. "See? Jason can't protect you. He'll drag you down with him." She bit her lip, torn between fear and resolve. Finally she whispered, "Oh, I'll testify. But you have to promise I'll be safe." "I'll do everything I can," I said simply. Then I stepped away and called Captain Morales, told him what happened, and asked him to arrange a safe apartment on the edge of town for Ashley to hide in. Leaving the bar, I walked through the cold, empty street, the wind biting through my jacket, but inside I felt lighter. For the first time in weeks, I believed we had a real chance. Jason had just lost his most important piece. The morning of the trial, I woke up at 5, the sky still black. I went to the kitchen and made chicken broth. The smell of onions and herbs filled the house, softening the tension that hung in the air. I brought the tray to Emily's bedside. She was still asleep, her face pale, her lips dry. Seeing her like that crushed me. I touched her shoulder gently. "Wake up, sweetheart," I whispered. "Eat something so you'll have strength." She opened her eyes, tired but calm, and nodded. I helped her into a light blue dress and wrapped a thin scarf around her neck to hide the last traces of bruising. I brushed her hair gently and said, "You don't need to hide anymore." Emily's eyes filled with tears, but she just took my hand, as if holding on to it was the only way to feel safe. Outside, Captain Morales was already waiting beside a patrol car. He greeted me with a firm nod, his expression serious but kind. "I've arranged an escort, Laura," he said. Captain Morales looked at me and said quietly, "Everything will be fine today." I nodded, a small wave of relief washing over me. At least I wasn't walking into this alone. On the drive to the courthouse, I could see people gathering in the town square. Some stared at us with curiosity, others gave faint nods of support, but a few turned away, shaking their heads. The rumors Jason had spread still lingered in the air like smoke. I knew that today's fight wasn't just against him. It was a fight to reclaim the truth. When we reached the courthouse steps, I spotted him. Jason stood there in a crisp navy suit, his face tight, his eyes sharp as blades. Beside him, his lawyer Henry Vance looked calm, but his jaw was set. He knew this was going to be brutal. A few yards away I saw Ashley Miller. She kept her distance from Jason, her arms crossed, her eyes hard but uncertain. Seeing her, I thought of that night in the bar when I'd convinced her to speak up. It gave me hope, but I also knew that hope alone wouldn't win this. I took Emily's hand and led her through the courthouse doors. Inside, the room was already full. The benches creaked as people shifted, murmuring to one another. I spotted Mrs. Parker sitting near the back, and when our eyes met, she nodded, a silent promise that she was there with us. When Judge Michael Cervantes entered, the room rose to its feet. The air was thick, the ceiling fan buzzing softly like the heartbeat of the space. Mark Turner began the presentation. His voice was calm but firm as he laid out every piece of evidence. The photos of Emily's bruises, Dr. Matthews's medical report, the footage from Mrs. Parker's camera showing Emily crying at my doorstep, and finally the copy of the forged land papers that Tom Alvarez had provided. When Mark played the video, the room filled with the sound of those desperate knocks and my daughter's faint sobs. I saw people wipe at their eyes. Beside me, Emily's hands trembled, she couldn't lift her head. I placed my hand on her shoulder, letting her feel my steady grip, reminding her she wasn't alone. Then Henry Vance stood. His voice was sharp, polished, cruel. "This young woman fabricated everything to extort my client," he declared. "Officer Laura Bennett abused her authority to coerce and slander." His words hit like daggers. I wanted to shout, to stand up and tear apart his lies, but Mark gave me a quiet signal. "Wait." He walked calmly to the projector and displayed Jason's threatening messages. "Shut up if you don't want to be replaced." The room went silent. Emily's shoulders shook. I could feel her pain just sitting beside me. Then Ashley was called to the stand. She looked terrified, her hands shaking, but she began to speak. "Jason promised me a share of the land," she said, her voice trembling. "He told me everything was legal, that he'd take care of it. But it was all a lie. He forged his wife's signature and tried to steal what wasn't his." Jason jumped up, shouting, "You betrayed me." The guards moved fast, forcing him back into his seat as Judge Cervantes snapped, "Order or you'll be removed." Ashley lowered her head but kept talking, each word breaking his facade. Watching her, I felt a strange mix of sorrow and gratitude. She had helped cause so much pain, but now she was helping to end it. Then it was my turn. I took the stand and swore the oath. My hands were steady. "I may wear a badge," I said, my voice clear, "but today I'm here as a mother. I will not let anyone, not even my son-in-law, destroy my daughter or mock the law." I turned toward Jason. "That man isn't a husband. He isn't a father. He's an abuser and a liar." The courtroom rippled with murmurs. Some of those who had believed his rumors now looked uncertain. I saw Mrs. Parker nod again, eyes shining. Finally, Judge Cervantes stood to deliver his verdict. His voice was deep and steady, but I barely heard the words. Just fragments. Protection order, asset freeze, land transfer nullified, charges forwarded to the district attorney's office. A wave of murmurs broke through the silence. Jason sank into his chair, his face drained of color. Henry Vance pulled off his glasses, wiping sweat from his brow. I turned to Emily, took her trembling hand and walked her outside. The sunlight hit our faces as we stepped down the courthouse stairs. Around us I heard whispers, "Laura won. Justice won." But I knew this wasn't just a victory. It didn't erase the bruises, the fear, or the nights Emily cried herself to sleep. Still, it was the beginning, a chance for her to start healing, to find her smile again. When Judge Cervantes read the verdict, the protection order for Emily, the freezing of Jason's assets, the annulment of the forged land transfer, and the referral of the case to the district attorney's office, I felt my knees weaken. As Emily and I walked out of the courthouse, the midday sun spilled across the steps. People were whispering, "Laura won. Justice won." But inside I didn't feel victorious. I only felt lighter, as if a heavy stone had finally been lifted from my chest. The pain, though, was still there, a quiet ache that I knew would never fully fade. That same afternoon, the police raided Reynolds Pawn and Loan and arrested Jason. Crowds filled the street to watch. Some jeered, others cursed him openly. I didn't go. But the next morning, when I saw the front page of the Springfield Gazette, Pawn shop owner arrested for assault and land fraud. I felt something strange. It wasn't joy. It was release. The man who had once called me mom was finally paying for what he'd done. But that small sense of freedom was quickly swallowed by sadness. I had trusted him. I had believed he would take care of my daughter. The betrayal, sharp and slow, still burned in my chest. Ashley disappeared from town just a few days after the trial. Rumor had it she'd gone to Monterey to start over. I didn't blame her. She had helped cause pain, but in the end she chose truth, and maybe that was enough. Jason's two enforcers, the ones everyone called the vultures, were also arrested for witness tampering. The neighborhood grew quiet again. No more hostile glares. No more threats in the dark. But the wounds Jason left on Emily and on me didn't vanish with his arrest. Emily moved in with me for good. Those first nights were hard. She barely slept, waking up drenched in sweat, screaming, "Mom, he's coming." Each time I sat beside her, held her hand and whispered, "It's okay, baby. You're safe now." Watching her fight those nightmares broke something in me, but it also reminded me of my own silence years ago, when I'd endured pain and said nothing. I took her to Dr. Nora Kim, our psychologist, every week without fail. Dr. Kim listened patiently, guiding Emily through the fear one small step at a time. Weeks passed and slowly I began to see the light come back into her eyes. She stopped hiding her face when we went out. She walked through the market with her head high again. One afternoon I found her in the kitchen making enchiladas, humming softly under her breath. That gentle tune made my throat tighten. It had been so long since I'd heard my daughter sing. It felt like the sun was coming back into our home. Even the town began to change. The same people who had once whispered now greeted me kindly. A few even came up to apologize. "Officer Bennett, we didn't know the truth," they said. I didn't hold it against them. Jason's lies had been convincing, and not everyone has the courage to question a man like him. Mrs. Parker came by one afternoon with a tray of sweet bread. She hugged Emily tight and said, "You turned out even stronger than your mother." Watching them laugh together warmed my heart. Maybe goodness could still bloom even after so much pain. I went back to work at the station. Each patrol reminded me of my duty, and every time I met a woman trapped in fear I saw Emily's face. I saw myself. One day I found a young girl sitting outside the precinct, clutching her purse, her eyes red from crying. I sat next to her and said softly, "You're not alone. My mother lived it. My daughter lived it. And I did too for a long time. Silence only feeds the monster." She looked up at me. Her tears kept falling, but something changed in her eyes. A spark of courage, the same one I'd seen in Emily. Months later, Emily was ready to work again. She got a job at an accounting firm downtown. That evening she came home glowing, holding her new ID badge. "Mom, I got the job," she said. I hugged her and we both cried, not tears of sorrow this time but of relief, of rebirth. Seeing her smile, radiant like the sun, I thought of the little girl who used to run through the yard shouting, "Mom, look at me." The scars would never fully disappear, but she was learning to live again, to be whole again. That night I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the wind ripple through the trees. I thought back to that night, the night Emily collapsed at my door, broken and bleeding, and how far we had come since. The months of fear, the endless nights, the moments when the whole town seemed to turn its back. Now, with Emily's laughter echoing softly through the house, I whispered to myself, "Justice can be slow. But when it comes, it gives you back your breath, your laughter, and your future." I took a sip of my coffee. It was cold, but it didn't matter. For the first time in a long while I felt peace. Emily was home healing. And though I carried my scars, I had found my purpose. To keep fighting, not just for my daughter but for every woman who needs someone to stand beside her. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and if any of this sounds familiar, feel free to share your own story in the comments.